Hi there, everybody. Welcome back for another Monday night of Ask-A-Naturalist with me, Rebecca, and the Schuylkill Center for Environmental Education. This is our weekly segment every Monday night at 5, where we bring a topic and then you can ask questions, anything related to that topic. So, tonight we are going to talk about aposematism. Say that 5 times fast. Aposematism, and we're going to discuss what that is, and we're going to focus on warning colors from some species that are commonly found at the Schuylkill Center and some other common species that perhaps are not found at the Schuylkill Center but are very well known, especially for their colors. This is going to be a really cool segment that'll be about a half an hour, and please feel free to ask me any questions you might have or any comments in the comment section below, where I will be looking at them throughout this segment and answering them live. Also, if you would like to leave in the comment section where you are watching from, that would be great. Helps us get to know you all, helps us get to know a little bit more about our audience, and it's just fun to be able to read through and see where you all are watching from tonight. The great thing about doing virtual programming for the Schuylkill Center has been that we're able for the first time to connect to people that are not super close to us, which is really, really cool. And we've been learning a lot about our new virtual audience in the last few months that we've started doing virtual content. So let's get started. Like I said, tonight's segment is going to be about aposematism. I will probably stammer through that word a few times more, so bear with me, but it is a difficult word to say out loud. So, what is aposematism? Now, an animal or sometimes plant that has certain adaptations such as poison or venom or other types of adaptations will often want to warn predators that they have these traits. Because what is the point of being poisonous to a creature if the creature is going to try and bite you anyways and then potentially harm or kill you? So animals that have these traits want to let everyone know that they are dangerous in some way. So aposematism is an animal trait that warns predators of their dangerous traits or adaptations in order to avoid an interaction where whatever weapon they have must actually be used. It is a learning process because predators will sometimes attempt, especially young ones, will sometimes try and attempt to bite or harm their prey, not knowing. However, animals that are able to learn over time, generally either from their families, their parents, or over such a time that it becomes instinct, they do survive better. And then in turn, that prey that has that aposematism, that warning in some way, will survive longer as well. So the ability to warn predators alongside whatever traits you have that are dangerous is a type of convergent evolution. Now, what that means is that these two traits have evolved together in order to be as beneficial and advantageous as they are to the animal. So the ability to have the weapon, for instance, your poison or your venom, we'll talk about the difference between those two in a little while, and the ability to warn a predator with different messaging of your weapon are two traits that have evolved together in order to help a prey creature live longer and survive better. And of course this is advantageous, like I said, because it is better to be able to warn a predator before they try and bite you and eat you, because either way, even with that warning and even without that warning and with that dangerous substance that you have, you're still hurt or you're still dead. It's actually mutually beneficial to both creatures, because the predator does not get sick or die because they know you're warning, and you do not get injured or die because you have successfully warned this predator away from eating you. So that's pretty interesting evolutionary tactic. Now, specifically, aposematic coloration, which we'll mostly be focusing on this evening, is using color as a way to send a warning message to warn off predators. So in the wild at the Schuylkill Center, we have a couple creatures that are bright, beautiful, easy to spot from far away, especially if you know what you're looking for. And these colors might seem like they're just trying to show off their beautiful colors, or they're trying to look loud, but actually they are sending a warning to anybody who might want to try and mess with them. Don't come near me because you'll regret it. And animals and predators, they know that those are warning colors. We will talk a little bit more about that as well in a little while. Now, aposematic coloration is one of the most common forms of aposematism, and those colors red, black, and yellow and orange tend to be the most common colors used to convey that warning message. So those are colors that even for humans, we know when we see that in the wild, that that is a color that we should mostly stay away from, unless you learn otherwise. That is something that is instinctually placed into us and into other animals and wildlife as well. Those colors are known to be dangerous in the wild a lot of the time. And the reason for that is that most creatures, when they are trying to stay safe and stay away from predators, are actually hiding, right? Does anyone know what that word is when an animal is hiding? Is trying not to be seen by predators? It's a special word. Bet you know it. It is camouflage. Camouflage is most animals' way of blending in. So when an animal decides not to blend in, doesn't decide really, but is born to not blend in physically with its environment, that indicates something that is a deviation from the norm. And those colors a lot of times will actually mean, I don't want to blend in, I want to stand out and make everyone in the area know that I am here, that I am dangerous, and that you have something to fear by coming too close to me. So that's a really, really important distinction. Now, aposematic coloration, like I said, coloration is not the only form of aposematism. There are different other kinds of ways that animals send message that they are dangerous in some way. The first one and the most popular one that comes to my mind is in fact the rattlesnake, which uses acoustic warnings instead to send warnings. Now, there is an extremely interesting study that is happening across the United States recently, where there are more and more rattlesnakes being born that actually do not rattle, that have lost the ability to rattle. And there are a few guesses, hypotheses as to why this is happening. One of which is that because of the phenomenon of killing rattlesnakes so frequently in various states where they pose most of a threat, people have been killing them to use for their skin or to eat sometimes, and for other reasons as well. And this has been done at such a high rate that sometimes in an area, the rattlesnakes that have a mutation that do not allow them to rattle, which normally might be seen as disadvantageous, are actually now the ones surviving, because people hunting for rattlesnakes are listening for that rattle sound. That is the only way that they are able to see them, because actually rattlesnakes are camouflaging as well. So the rattlesnakes that do not rattle are surviving. They are giving birth, and they are giving birth to creatures and baby rattlesnakes that also do not rattle. And so now we're seeing an uptick in rattlesnakes all across the country that actually don't rattle. And the interesting thing about that is I've actually seen one up in New York State, upstate, and we came across one on the trail that was producing the rattling movement, just like this, right? Coiled up on the side of the trail going like this, but there was no rattle coming out. So the snakes their brains have not quite caught up with their bodies in that they do not realize that their movement of rattling is no longer necessary or effective, which is extremely interesting as well. They attribute the loss of rattle actually to atrophy in the rattling muscles. So although all of the physicality is there per se, those muscles just don't rattle inside of the tail anymore. Super interesting. I would encourage you to look that up if you want to learn how humans can really affect and drive evolution in a much more rapid rate than any other factor. It's really, really incredible. Let's get back to Aposematic Coloration now. So at the Schuylkill Center, we do have a lot of creatures that have these traits and these adaptations of warning colors, and I will go over a few of them with you. The ladybug is a big popular one. Here's a picture of a bunch of ladybugs here. Lovely little creatures, can be pests, can invade homes, but generally they are the type of bug that if you had to choose one to invade your home, people tend to mind them the least amount because they're lovely and because they really don't do much harm to you. They're just kind of there. Now, ladybugs actually secrete a fluid called lymph, and they will secrete this when they're feeling threatened, and they do have that bright red coloring and those black dots that shows everyone stay away from me. Ladybugs are not thought to be toxic to humans unless humans have allergies. The orange species of ladybug produces 2 proteins that researchers do believe that could cause allergies in humans, similar to sneezing, those kinds of things. But other than that, even if they bite a human, they are not known to cause harm. However, if you have a ladybug infestation, either in your home or your backyard or something like that, and your dog or cat gets a hold of them, they can be toxic to dogs and cats. If ingested, they've been known to show sort of almost chemical burn marks in the mouth and in the lower digestive system. And of course, the dog and cats will have trouble digesting those shells from the beetle wings, and so you will have to keep an eye out for those as well. Now, there are different species of ladybugs. As I mentioned, the orange ladybugs are the most toxic. Those are those ones that are orangey with those black spots. These ones, I believe, are actually orange ladybugs. They're very common. They're also called, this goes for all ladybugs, very interesting, they're actually called ladybird beetles in parts of Europe, which I think is just lovely and adorable. So these are the most toxic ones, still not super toxic to humans, although they will have the most amount of toxins that will allow for allergies if people are susceptible to ladybug allergies. And the red ones, which we more commonly see, are a different species, and those are still toxic but contain fewer toxins actually than the orange ones. Ladybugs also will partake in an adaptation called reflexive bleeding, which is when they will release blood from their joints if they are feeling threatened. This blood has a bad odor and is also toxic to some animals and can cause allergens for people as well. So 2 toxic traits on the ladybug, that lymph fluid and that reflexive bleeding, which is disgusting. Now, let's talk about a really super common animal bug that you will see at the Schuylkill Center, and that is, of course, the famous monarch butterfly. Beautiful, beautiful butterfly. Obvious to see, it's got those tiger colors. I actually have here, this is a preserved actual monarch butterfly that we have in our possession. It was found in Cape May, New Jersey, in 1961. So very well preserved because it is still obviously quite beautiful, quite intact. So those the ladybugs, same color though, those monarch butterflies are toxic. They are poisonous to anything that would try to eat them. And the reason they are poisonous is because they eat milkweed. Now, milkweed is a native plant. It does flower, and it is used as food for monarch caterpillars, such as this one right here. And monarch caterpillars will eat that poisonous milky substance that comes out of the milkweed, and that is what gives them their poison. Monarch caterpillars also have this sort of yellow and black stripes, which are warning colors, more aposematic coloration there, even from that caterpillar. So the caterpillar will consume that milkweed, milk substance, and even through adulthood then, after it goes into its chrysalis and becomes a fully fledged butterfly and is not eating that milkweed anymore, it will still maintain its toxin. Now, the other one I would like to talk about is a lovely little guy. This is a red salamander. We have tons of these at the Schuylkill Center. Their official name is the northern red salamander. Oh, they're lovely little creatures. They're slimy and they're lovely and small, and they are pretty docile in my experience. If you see one and want to get up close to one, I would not recommend touching it, however, because these northern red salamanders do contain glands on their backs and on their tails that produce a poisonous secretion if they are feeling threatened. Now, for humans, if you were to get that poisonous secretion on your hands, it would not harm you as long as you wash your hands and make sure you're not touching the eyes, nose, mouth, ears, any part of your face with that poison. However, to creatures like birds, skunks, raccoons, it could pose way more of a problem if they were to ingest it, and they know that because it is that bright, beautiful red color. Now, the young adults are far more toxic than an older adult, and you'll know its relative age because the young adults are actually a lot brighter in color as well. So this would be considered a pretty young one. Once they turn older, they do deepen in color, and they are a lot less toxic than that. Then, so if they are feeling threatened, they will wrap their tail and their legs around their head, and they'll form a little coil, and they'll start to produce that secretion. I believe the secretion is always on their bodies anyway being produced, but I do think it increases in production as they are feeling threatened. They are thought to get their toxins from ingesting certain bacteria, actually, along with their food. Now, Aposematic coloration is interesting, and the toxins are interesting because it is not always known how those toxins are put into the bodies of those animals that have them. Sometimes it is from food, such as poison dart frogs here. Now, we don't have any poison dart frogs in Philadelphia, of course, but these are much more common in tropical areas closer to the equator, where it's nice and warm and wet for these little guys. Now, poison dart frogs do get their poison from the food that they eat down there. So the really interesting thing about poison dart frogs is that if you have one as a pet, which I have seen some people do, and you feed it a diet of, let's say, some tiny crickets or things you'd get at a pet store, they are actually no longer toxic. So their toxin is very environmentally dependent and very diet dependent as well. And it would be the same, of course, for monarch butterflies. Some creatures will get their toxin in other ways or are born with it and it's produced inside of their body, things like that. So the next animal I would like to talk about, actually, is the black widow spider, which everybody knows about the black widow spider here. Very, very notorious spider, of course. Now, the black widow spider is very known to be venomous. In fact, it is approximately 15 times more powerful in venom than the rattlesnake, although it is not usually fatal, which deviates from common misconceptions. It can be, but usually not so. And of course, it does not usually want to bite. It will only bite if threatened by people. It would prefer to use its venom for its food instead. So the black widow is an excellent example, though, of this aposematic coloration, because even if you had never heard of this spider before, if you saw a jet black spider like this with this red hourglass figure in the middle of its stomach, this induces a very primal and instinctual fear in other animals. When we see this kind of coloring in the wild, we know that this is a warning color and that the creature is sending us a very clear message by having these colors. Now, when we talk about aposematism, we also have to talk about mimicry, because for plenty of actually toxic creatures that are trying to send us a message, there are other creatures who have evolved alongside them who are actually harmless, but who have been able to adapt and evolve certain colors that make them look harmful to predators, and that will give them the advantage of being able to stay alive even if they are completely harmless. There are two types of mimicry. There's Batesian mimicry and there is Mullerian mimicry. Now, Batesian mimicry is when a harmless creature will mimic the colors of a harmful creature. And that is advantageous because they are tricking predators, right? Now, one of the biggest types of example, most common example I have for that is these two snakes. So, for those of you watching, I have two species of snakes here. I have a coral snake and I have a scarlet king snake. One of them is venomous and one of them is harmless. I'd like you to guess which one you think is which by typing it in the comments, if you will. I will give you a phrase that will help you, and the phrase is, red touches black, friend of Jack. Red touches yellow, kill a fellow. So using that phrase, that is a common little phrase to help people decide, mostly researchers decide which snakes are dangerous and which one is harmless. And looking close at these snakes, does anybody want to guess which one, top or bottom, they think is the venomous snake? So, the top snake, the coral snake, is very venomous. And the king snake underneath is completely harmless. So there are always little phrases like that that help scientists try and decide which creatures are poisonous and which ones are harmless. However, of course, they will make mistakes and chaos will ensue, of course. So it's best to avoid snakes at all in general, especially if they have these colors, just to be certain. Better to be uncertain from a distance than try to be certain from up close and perhaps be incorrect, right? And by the way, if you're watching this, please feel free, even if it's not live and you watch this later, to put any questions you have for me or comments in the comment section. I'll be reading them and answering them. If you'd like to guess along with my questions, even when it's not live, go ahead, try and guess, make it public, and see if you're right. And let me know if you learned something tonight. So that is an example of Batesian mimicry, is harmless mimicking harmful. by the way, because we're talking about these venomous snakes, we're talking about these venomous spiders and these poisonous salamanders, does anybody know what the difference between poisonous and venomous is? That's a hard one. I ask this question a lot. The difference is that if something is poisonous, if you are poisonous, if I bite you, I will get sick or die. If you are venomous and you bite me, I will get sick or die. Those are the two distinctions, and they're really important, right? It matters if something is going to bite you and infect you, or if you have to ingest it. There's a lot more difference in the amount of control you have about succumbing to poisonous or venomous creatures. So this coral snake is venomous, meaning if it bites you, you will get sick or die. Black widow, same thing. However, those salamanders, the red salamander, those monarch butterflies, those are poisonous. If they are ingested or bitten, the predator will get sick, maybe die, in some cases. Now, the other type of mimicry is Malarian mimicry, and the most common example of Malarian mimicry is between bees and wasps, actually. It is when two harmful or toxic species will actually mimic coloring so that a predator will see more of that two populations faster and get accustomed to seeing them and avoiding them, which in turn makes them learn faster that these two populations are both toxic. And they don't always know the difference between the two species. They just know, for instance, if they're seeing bees, wasps, maybe they're seeing up to 4 or 5 different species all in one area. But they know those yellow and black stripes, even if they don't know the different species, are important to stay away from. So this is advantageous to both of those different warning species, because the faster a predator learns that they are dangerous, the more of them will stay alive and be successful. So that's another important kind of mimicry. Now, one of the most common questions I get really quickly is, are bird species that are colorful, are they displaying a postsomatism? The answer, at least for Schuylkill Center birds, is no. But it's a really, really good and important question, because not all bright colors, those blue jays, those cardinals, those yellow warblers, not all creatures are displaying warning colors. Some creatures, such as many birds that have bright colors, are actually displaying attraction colors. The brighter a bird is, the more beautiful it is seen by its counter gender, which in the case of birds, most of the time the males are the more bright and beautiful, and the females are better at camouflaging and have much more brown, sort of dull coloring. So the more bright and beautiful a male bird is, the more females will be attracted to him and his lovely colors. So that's a really common question I get, and it's a really good one, because it's important to know which creatures and what colors are telling you to stay away and not get any closer, and which creatures are doing it for other reasons that might not have any effect on you, other than they're easier to see and they add a splash of beauty and color to our green forests. That is the end of Ask-A-Naturalist tonight. Please, if you're watching this later on, comment in the comment section as to where you're watching from. Let me know if you learned something new and what it was. You can suggest future topics, and tune in next week. And of course, check out our Facebook page and our website to see what other programs that we are doing. We have a ton going on. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful night. Bye.